The Fed is stuck. They cannot create inflation. What they're going to end up doing here, though, Elijah, is cause they're going to overshoot at one point. They're going to start printing and printing and printing and printing and adding to a digital screen. And then, as Alan Greenspan says, and you know about this, I'm sure, Alan Greenspan is now backing up what I have been saying for probably the better part of a decade now, that the debt is in a bubble. So don't listen to Greg Mannarino anymore. Listen to Alan Greenspan. If we do get a rapid sell-off, like Alan Greenspan says, in the debt market, then cash is going to start to move. When that happens, all of these extra bills, digital or otherwise, are going to start chasing the same amount of goods, and we're going to end up in a possibly horrible situation with runaway inflation. The Fed always gets it wrong. They've never been right, ever in their history have they gotten a thing right, and they're going to get this one wrong as well.
While some online bullion dealers continue to charge almost $2 over spot for 1 ounce silver rounds, SD Bullion is selling 1 ounce silver rounds at only 49 cents over spot on any quantity. Again, that's $9.99 fine silver for just 49 cents over spot for any quantity. If you haven't joined the over 40,000 precious metals investors by making the switch to SD Bullion, what are you waiting for? You could save hundreds or even thousands of dollars on your next order. SD Bullion. The lowest prices, period.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with the SD Weekly Metals and Markets Wrap, and our guest today is Greg Mannarino from TradersChoice.net. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back.
All right. Well, I'd first like to discuss the precious metal markets. Now, last week, we saw the precious metal markets rally quite a bit after Trump's comments on North Korea, but this week, they've been mostly flat. What is your perspective on the recent price action in the gold and silver markets? My
perspective is I ignore it. I don't care what it does. I'll be quite honest with you. I've been ignoring it pretty much for years. It's not real. We know this. The price action has no bearing on reality. There's no price discovery mechanism at all. All I know is I will continue to do what I've been doing since silver was about $8 an ounce, and that means every single month buying more. Not just of silver, but you know, and most people know that silver is my most favorite metal, bar none. But I don't care what it does. Honestly, this is a long-term investment for me. It's not a trade. I'm betting against the debt, becoming my own central bank, and it's common knowledge now. We keep hearing more and more banks getting caught red-handed, manipulating the price. Regulators turn a blind eye to it. Those that are supposed to keep track of it, they don't care. So I don't care either. So let them do whatever they want. If they want to push the price lower in the short term, great. I'm all for it. I don't care how low they want to push it. Again, this is not a trade. This is an investment over the long haul, because we know that fiat currencies are pretty much being destroyed on purpose by their respective central banks, and it is not going to stop.
I know you also trade the markets, and I was wondering if you could discuss, the stock market, and I was wondering if you could discuss the recent price action in the stock market. We, a little while ago hit a new high of 22,000 in the Dow, but actually today, as we're recording this on Thursday evening, today was the second worst day on Wall Street this year. The Dow is down over 250 points. What is your perspective on today's price action and the price action of this week?
Well, let's just back up a minute here. The last time Janet Yellen opened her mouth and she made a complete 180, going from hawkish to dovish, I said publicly on my channel and on a couple of other shows that this market would hit record high after record high after record high. As soon as she said that, the moment she said that, I knew that's what would happen, and that's exactly what did happen. The market went up, record. And then right now the market's consolidating a little bit. Today's price action was just an overreaction, in my opinion, to the unfortunate terror attacks in Barcelona, on top of the frank deep state play against President Trump here. I want everyone to be aware, and I think that your listeners are well aware of what's going on here. the deep state is rearing their ugly head in every way possible here. Their newest attack is going after the Confederate statues and trying to divide us, divide and rule. We've seen this before. Keep us polarized, no gray areas, no place to discuss anything. For example, if this were a war, they would want to fight until everyone was dead on one side instead of trying to negotiate anything. When President Trump came out and he tried to inject a little gray area into what happened in Charlottesville, saying, look, both sides were at fault, which they were. I mean, anyone with even one functioning brain cell can see this. Both parties involved here came there with weapons. So look, there's enough blame to go around here. I'm not condoning racism or hate in any way, shape, or form, but this is what they're doing, and it's unbelievable. The Confederate statues have been there for hundreds of years, and all of a sudden, right now, they're becoming an issue. Does anyone find that to be kind of strange? You should. If you don't. And again, we're going to see more of this, and this is what's putting some pressure on the market. We have all these CEOs turning their back on President Trump now. Again, they're part of the deep state, and they're going to pander and play into this and whatever's in their best interest. These CEOs, for all you know, are the biggest racists who ever lived. I guarantee you that some of them are, but they will not show that. They got to pander right now because this is the agenda right now. The left has lost the election. They're very angry about this, and they're going to do everything they can to not just destroy this president, but destroy our country at this point. So be ready for anything. That's all I have to say.
Now, you mentioned what the Fed is doing right now. The Fed minutes came out Wednesday. What is your perspective on what the Fed is going to do, and what was your reaction when you heard the Fed minutes? What was my reaction?
It's funny. I actually got nauseated. I did a video recently on my own blog where I actually penned a little picture of a of a caricature throwing up. I said it was vomitous. Again, so what's going on here with the Federal Reserve is pretty simple with regard to the minutes that came out. They are not hitting their inflation targets no matter how hard they're trying. The U.S. dollar hit a 30-month low against the euro just a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And despite the fact that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to punish the dollar, we're not hitting our inflation targets. And it probably won't because, again, our economy is dead in the water. We're not going anywhere. We got retail falling off of a cliff, malls closing, stores closing, not just retail stores closing. We're talking about restaurants are closing as well. The U.S. consumer is in dire straits. But they won't tell anybody this. So the Federal Reserve is going to have to, in my opinion, still raise rates one more time this year. I think September, we can expect a 25 basis point hike to the federal funds rate. Then they're done. They are not, and I cannot stress this enough, they are not going to touch their balance sheet at this point. The moment that they started talking about normalizing their abnormal balance sheet, I think I was the first guy out here to say it's not going to happen. And now some of the mainstream commentators are starting to parrot me. I am sure that they watch my work, but that's the truth here. The Fed is stuck. They cannot create inflation. What they're going to end up doing here, though, Elijah, is because they're going to overshoot at one point. They're going to start printing and printing and printing and printing and adding to a digital screen. And then as Alan Greenspan says, and you know about this, I'm sure, Alan Greenspan is now backing up what I have been saying for probably the better part of a decade now, that the debt is in a bubble. So don't listen to Greg Mannarino anymore. Listen to Alan Greenspan. If we do get a rapid sell-off, like Alan Greenspan says, in the debt market, then cash is going to start to move. When that happens, all of these extra bills, digital or otherwise, are going to start chasing the same amount of goods, and we're going to end up in a possibly horrible situation with runaway inflation. The Fed always gets it wrong. They've never been right, ever in their history have they gotten a thing right, and they're going to get this one wrong as well.
Now, you've talked about how what's happening right now is like completely backwards with the market's reaction to the economy. I think you were having a video blog on Tuesday. You talked about what the Chinese markets did after, some bad economic data came out and the markets rallied. So what is your perspective on just the backwards market action we're seeing, and why is this happening?
Well, it's the same story that we've been seeing. We no longer, anyone who is listening to this, I would believe, understands that we do not have a free market anymore. We have not had a free market since the 2008 event when world central banks, the Federal Reserve, none more so, decided to get in here and start buying everything, specifically manipulating artificially. And this is I'm not just making this up. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The Fed has been artificially suppressing interest rates for the better part of a decade. So they're running the show here by taking the largest part of the market, the debt market, artificially suppressing those prices. Again, you get distortions created in the marketplace across the board. There's not one asset class, not one, that has a real price discovery mechanism behind it. I can't stress that enough. People believe that they're looking at the price of housing and this is a real price. Based on what? Based on a runaway central bank, the stock market. It's insane. Nothing is real. Again, and precious metals fits right into that. Although that's even worse because we got banks directly involved here in manipulating the price of it lower, and that's fine. Let them continue to do that. But the fact of the matter is, when we keep getting bad economic news, that means world central banks have to continue what they're doing, going right into what I had just said prior with regard to the Federal Reserve and their balance sheet, which is going to get monumentally worse than it is right now. Look, and when we heard the minutes the other day, and the market didn't actually react that positively to it at that point because there was all this nonsense going on with the deep state, stuff like that. But once the market gets understands, I would not be surprised to see this market bounce back from this 274 point drop in a matter of days or a week here. As a matter of fact, I'm long just 2 positions right now. Anyone can see my holdings. Go to traderschoice.net. I added to both of those positions today at the low, because I know this is going to bounce up. The Fed is going to do whatever they need to do to keep propping up the markets. And the reason for that is they cannot admit they are wrong. The Fed and the world central banks have created a financial Frankenstein. There's no escaping what is coming down the pike. But until that point, they're going to support this market because they still have a little ammunition left until they completely run out of ammo. In other words, when we reach a moment of complete total debt saturation, which we're not there yet, believe it or not. This is why they can continue to suspend the debt bubble here where it is. The Fed will not admit they're wrong, so they're going to continue doing more of the same, more stimulus, more backdoor, whatever they got to do to prop up this market. There is no free market anymore, and there's the frightening aspect of it. We have an environment of extremes. We have bubbles to the upside, we have inverse bubbles, and we have a void in the middle, a big void, and that's where all the prices should be, in this voided area, and that's where they're all going to go back to at one particular point. These distortions, although I believe they're going to get worse before they get better, are going to continue still because world central banks are running the show.
Now, you say there aren't any free markets, but what about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin?
Well, that might be the one aspect of the market where I would say if you're looking for some type of a real price action, it actually might be there. It's an interesting prospect, actually, and I've been talking a lot about cryptocurrencies lately. I own Bitcoin. I own cryptocurrencies. I think it's an important place to be as a dollar alternative, although I think we're going to see a lot of wild action here with regard to Bitcoin. Several months ago, I wrote an article. The article was titled Bitcoin $5,000 and Beyond. I think we hit 4,500 today.
A new all-time high, yeah.
A new all-time high. We're going to hit my target of $5,000. That was my target. I'm sure we're going to be there in a very short period of time. I'm not saying it's going to continue going higher. I am fully expecting some, and very soon, more than likely, some wild swings with regard to the price of Bitcoin. Again, it's the players out here. It's the central banks who are also there, and this is why, to a certain degree, maybe their price action, is gonna suffer. You're gonna see them trying to shake the weak hands out of this, and I can't stress this enough. Do not let that happen. I am a strong believer in dollar alternatives, as you know. I've been talking about gold and silver for years. Their prices should be exponentially higher in a real market. But if you're looking for a dollar alternative, Bitcoin would be a good one. Other cryptocurrencies as well would be a good spot to be in here as well. But don't get shaken out of this. Crypto is where you need to be, without any doubt. If you're looking at dollar alternatives other than gold and silver, which again are still my favorites of all time. I want to stress that again because I keep getting bombarded with emails about it and questions about it. Greg, you're turning towards crypto. I've not that I am turning toward crypto. I believe in cryptocurrency as an alternative to the dollar, which world central banks, the Federal Reserve is going to continue to crush. Now, I'm not saying it's going to go down in a linear fashion. It's going to bounce around a little bit, but the longer term trajectory for the dollar is lower, much lower.
Now, we've just seen this past year the dollar dropping a lot. What is your perspective on the recent drop in the dollar?
Well, the dollar dropped. I told everyone we should look for a bounce, and we're kind of we're getting a little bit of a bounce here. The bounce is not going to last. The dollar, in my opinion, is no longer even looked at as a safe haven currency anymore, because it's interesting to see the reaction of the dollar when things happen. Used to be an immediate rush into the dollar. We're not seeing that anymore. That's kind of an interesting thing. I don't believe any of the mainstream financial channels are covering, but I think the dollar is losing its king status here. And again, it's because the world central banks they're in a lot of trouble with regard to it. There's a currency war going on. There's no doubt about it. It's been going on for quite a long time here. It's a race to the bottom, and people need to be getting away from it. I don't care about this little bounce. It doesn't mean nothing. I told people it was coming. It's here now. It's still probably more than likely is going to continue for a little bit, but it doesn't mean anything to me. It's still way below its 50-day moving average. It's been there for a long time. It's going to continue to stay there, in my opinion. I'd be shocked, beyond shocked, if we even get close to its 50-day moving average. But I think it's going to continue to go lower here because the Fed has promised to create inflation by any means necessary. So for you dollar bulls out here, you're in a lot of trouble.
Now, before we let you go, I wanted to touch on one last topic. You've talked before about how you trade the markets and how you invest some of your profits into gold and silver. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what is your perspective on how people can do that if they're interested in turning some of their paper profits into physical gold and silver?
Well, I'm not saying trading is not for everyone. You really got to have something wrong with you, I think, to want to be. This business of trading is it's not easy. It's not for everybody. You got to put in a lot of time here. I put in 80, 100 hours a week. There's no doubt about it. And that's how you make this work for you. There's no way out of it. You can't really do this part-time. I'm a full-time trader. That's all I do. Other than blogging and stuff like that. But I do offer a free. It's 100% free. I don't ask for anything. If you want to get involved in trading, just go to my website, traderschoice.net. Go to my publications page, download my free publication there. If that's something you want to get involved in. But what I do, I trade the markets when I have a successful trader. I keep a certain amount of money in my trading account. I know I don't want to go much above that. And whenever I go above a certain amount in my trading account, I sweep it and I take that cash and I'll allocate that into dollar alternatives. Mostly it's silver, but I am still buying gold. I still buy platinum, palladium. I'm also investing in Bitcoin as well. I have a nice position in there, and that's the way I think people need to do it. You can't have all your eggs in one basket either. You need to be diversified into a lot of different things, and I think if you play this right down the line, you'll come out okay. But again, we're going to have to see how this plays out because it's much worse. It's much deeper, literally, than what's going on here in the financial world here. I think our country is at a crossroads here. There are those that want to bring us down. It's not just about the president here. It's about our country. It's about our way of life. It's about if we're going to let it happen. And I'm afraid that the deep state here has a plan. To cause a lot of strife here in our country, opposing parties, opposing people with no gray area, no place to talk, no way to work something out. They want you on one side of an equation, screaming or trying to harm someone on the other side of that equation. And it's a very frightening prospect that people are actually falling into it.
And how can people fight against this? Fight against, as you say, the deep state trying to take us down?
Well, I think they got to understand that we're not each other's enemies. This is a tactic that's been used for thousands and thousands of years. This is how the few can control the many. I mean, just tell people just read a book. So just understand that. Again, it's just too stupid. Does anyone, again, let me bring it up. Does anyone find it interesting that these Confederate statues are now all of a sudden becoming an issue? They've only been there for a couple of hundred years. Why now? Why not under Obama? Why not under Bush before him? I mean, you can go on and on. This is what they're doing. They're going to throw everything they can at people to keep them divided. I mean, there are entire think tanks put together where they say, what can we do to get the people polarized? How can we keep them polarized? How do we not let them get to any kind of a discussion in any way, shape, or form? These hate groups, they've been around since the beginning of time. It's not going to stop. So just realize that we are not each other's enemies. They want you to believe that. And the more the mainstream keeps talking about it, the bigger these groups are going to become on both sides. And this is exactly what they want. It's exactly what they're getting. Don't fall into this. Don't be a pawn in their game. Understand, you don't have to play along here. Just say no. Just call them out for what it is. They're the ones that are causing all the strife. It's not us. It's these groups. You know this. This is common knowledge. It's being reported all over alternative news outlets here. They're being paid to do this. They're being paid to do it. So it's not real. It's part of everything else that's going on here. So just understand that we're living in an environment of extremes across every single thing you want to talk about here, and how you want to play that out, whether you want to participate or not, that's up to you. But understand, this has a potential to get very, very, very ugly if we let it.
All right. Well, Greg Mannarino, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Just go to my website, traderschoice.net. Follow me on Steemit. I have a blog there now where I post my videos as well as articles every day. You can also find me on YouTube. I'm a pretty easy guy to find. And start turning off your television here, because I think that's a lot of the problem, and start paying attention to shows like this. Alternative media, for which they are really starting to come down on. I don't know about you, Elijah, but me, for example, they're causing me all kinds of problems here on YouTube, threatening to take down videos of mine, demonetizing things. I don't care, but they're coming after us big time. Greg Hunter's site got taken down recently. It's back up now. A lot of guys are getting hurt. A lot of people out here. So, just understand, it's all part of what's going on here. They don't want shows like this to be heard by too many people.
Well, Greg Mannarino, once again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks.